Yeah, g'day. Welcome to Wolf and Z Outdoors. Yes, I know, two videos in the matter of a few days after almost 6.5 years of nothing. It's either a feast or a famine around here. Okay, so I promised in my last video that I would go through some of the projects that I've done over the intervening years, in which I wasn't filming, but I was at least still camping and bettering my camping gear. So here now is my journey towards finding a comfortable night's sleep. Enjoy. For decades, my default camping accommodation was the tent, starting with the old A-frame tents and then moving towards dome tents as they became available. However, in 2017, after 3 years of thinking about it, I ordered myself a hammock. I bought a pair of daisy chain straps and a couple of carabiners, grabbed a couple of cheap tarpaulins, and headed off to my favourite testing grounds at Waikawa Stream Campground. So here's my first experimental setup. The hammock is a travel hammock / bivvy by DD Hammocks. It differs from their frontline model in that the cloth for the body of it is waterproof, so it can be put on the ground and used as a bivvy if there are no trees. I've experimented here using a piece of Dyneema cord to make a structural ridge line that runs between the two carabiners so that the hammock sag is set properly. The Dyneema ridgeline also gave me something to clip my bug net to. It was a very successful experiment. I was able to have a nice dry night even though it rained, and my experience with hammock camping was such that I decided I would continue. The setup looked especially striking at night time with the reflectorized guy lines. Having decided that hammock camping was the way forward, I started improving my hammock setup. I bought more Dyneema cord and made continuous loops to replace the webbing straps that came with the hammock. I made the loops extra long so that my ridgeline would be high enough to accommodate the hammock's built-in bug net, which clips to prusik loops on the ridgeline with a couple of small S-beaners. I also bought whoopee slings to fine-tune the hang, upgraded to smaller, lighter carabiners, and bought a hammock sleeve to facilitate packing away the hammock. I tested it all in my sister's backyard, since she was the only person I knew who had decent trees. With the bug net unclipped from the ridgeline, the sleeve can be pulled down over the hammock, ready to be stowed in the hammock bag. For hammock camping, a decent tarpaulin is a necessity, so my next set of purchases included a 3 metre by 3 metre DD Hammocks tarp, which I tested out when I went camping with my brother and sister-in-law on New Year's Day 2021. I had also got a DD Hammocks in a pocket that hangs from loops inside the bug net and a hiking pole, which is just as well as I had a hard enough job finding even one stick to prop up the corner of the tarp. Here, I was experimenting with hanging my pack a day bag on the hammock suspension to keep them off the ground, so I took an assortment of carabiners and S-beaners. Since trying to use my Exped down mat, only partially inflated, as a thermal liner had proved problematic, and I did not yet have an underquilt, I used a reflectorized foam shade for a car's windshield instead. This worked very well. Unfortunately, the night's sleep wasn't as comfortable as my first experiment due to the weight of pack and day bag on the suspension pulling the hammock taut. I kept finding the sides of the hammock pushing back against me rather than yielding when I lay diagonally across the hammock. This is Waikawa Stream Campground on 24 January 2021. We experimented with using the inner from my MacPack Microlight with a tarp, which worked well. It rained most of the weekend and Tangwin remained quite dry. And here's Tangwin and Jess. Off to the left we have the dome tent where Jess and Tegan spent the night. As it lacked shelter over the entrance of the tent, unzipping the fly let rain into the tent inner. And finally, here's my hammock with a tarp set in porch mode. Despite the nearly constant rain, I was quite comfortable and dry all weekend. And here we have a comparison between my hammock gear and my tents. On the right is my MacPack Microlight single person tent and my Exped down mat. Top left is one of my 3-person dome tents, below which is my DD Hammocks tarp, travel hammock / bivvy and underblanket. Grand trunk daisy chain and straps, guy line bag, peg bag and hiking poles. The hammock gear is certainly bulkier than either of the tents, and the DD Hammocks underblanket, which is rated for -5 degrees Celsius or 23 degrees Fahrenheit, is far bulkier than the XP down mat, which is rated at -12 degrees Celsius or about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's not as simple as bulk and weight or what the temperature rating is. For a start, -12 degrees is overkill for the camping that I do. The MacPack is so small that you're cuddling your wet pack and hiking clothes all night long, as the vestibule is scarcely large enough for a pair of hiking boots, and it's barely high enough for me to sit up in. Taking off a jersey over your head in the confines of the tent is a feat of contortion that I can no longer perform. Using the tent inner with a tarpaulin rather than the fly it came with was an improvement, as there was sheltered space outside the tent to stow your gear, and at least it gave you a view. And to be honest, I'm not 100% certain that the fly is still waterproof given its age. The 3-person tent has ample room for one person and their gear, and certainly has more headroom than the MacPack, but it lacks a vestibule to shelter the inner door from the rain, so you pretty much need a tarpaulin to provide additional rain protection, especially if you're trying to put it up in the rain and don't want the inner getting wet. Besides which, you're still crawling into and out of either tent on your hands and knees, and I'm getting too old for that crap. Too old to be sleeping on the ground too, no matter how good the sleeping pad is. The hammock affords me a comfortable night's sleep and a comfortable place to sit during the day, and I don't have to crawl through mud or wet vegetation to get to it. I can set the tarp to whatever height suits me and in whatever configuration best suits the situation, and I can put up the tarp to provide shelter long before I get the hammock out of the bag. Now that I've got over the initial learning curve of setting up hammock and tarp, and tweaked it to make it easier, it's more convenient than setting up either tent, as most of it can be done while standing up, rather than squatting, kneeling or bending over. So that was my hammock project. As most things, it's still ongoing and will be tweaked over the years, but at the moment I've dialed it up to pretty much how I'm enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to the next few months worth of camping, and hopefully this time I might take my camera out with me. Bye.